Charming Predator, featuring Ted Bundy. Full name, Ted Theodore Robert Caldwell Bundy. Crimes and sprees. Ted was known to be America's most notorious serial killers in history of US, aka United States of America. He was involved in the varieties of crimes and acts, including taking the lives of at least 100 individuals, as it was reported. While he confessed to 30 individuals taking the lives of them, it is highly suspected the number of victims exceeded 100. During his murders, he would target young females, college-aged in specific age group. It was reported several occasions Ted would first fake himself as an injured man, lure the females and ask them for help, then use that as an advantage and knock them unconscious with a large object before strangling them to death. Other methods were used too, such as kidnapping and scamming them before the killings occurred. He was heavily involved in sexual torture and known to rape them after capturing them or after the murders, aka necrophiliac activities. It was reported he would use the female bodies as trophies inside of his apartments for periods of time. On other occasions, he would break into females' homes and attack sleeping females during the night. His crimes had occurred in several states, including Washington, Oregon, Utah, Idaho, Colorado, Florida, and California. The killings had lasted from 1974 to 1978, also known to escape from prison or custody 2 times before his final arrest. Investigation. On 1974, in Washington state, the state police was reported there were several murders had gone on for a while. One day, a female named Elizabeth Clover had reported a man named Ted Bundy as a suspect. In addition, a sketch was drawn to see what the male had looked like. Despite the multiple reports, due to the lack of evidence, the police had to dismiss the cases multiple times. In addition, the records of Ted Bundy was clear when they researched it, and no criminal records were discovered. One day, a witness who goes by Carol DeRanche claimed she had escaped and was a survivor from Ted Bundy. The police once again held an investigation as they sketched the man, and that was similar to the previous description in Washington police station. His first arrest had occurred on 1975 from a traffic violation, though it was unrelated to the escape occurred on 1977, as he was soon released from the 1975 arrest. There were 2 escapes on 1977, one of them involving Ted jumping from a courthouse while the other involved escaping from his jail cell. The final arrest had occurred on February 15, 1978, as the FBI were also involved in the manhunt for Ted Bundy. It wasn't the FBI or major officers who arrested Ted Bundy. It was a local officer who goes by David Lee, who discovered a suspicious vehicle that was speeding, but Ted refused, leading to a minor chase. Ted had refused to stop the vehicle, leading to a minor chase. Ted would break out of his vehicle, then attempt to bolt away. However, was soon tackled by the officer David and was held in custody as his final arrest. Trial and court proceedings. During the trial and the proceedings, at first, Ted was given a lawyer, however they would soon be fired. Instead, Ted himself rising as his own legal counsel. In the courtroom, he would often make dramatic speeches that was supposedly to argue against the jury. However, they were failed attempts. Tragically, in the court, a club began to form, which goes by Bundy Fan Club. A club that was filled with females, ironically the same age as the victims, who were attracted to Ted. While not related, Ted would bring his girlfriend, Carol Ann Boone, as a witness, then would marry her in front of the court. Somehow legally engaged, back into the court trial for the murders. Evidence including bite marks on the victims' corpses were used. In addition, survivor Carol DeRange faced her attacker, Ted, testifying against the killer. Ted himself during the court was highly confident, combative, theoretical, and instead of treating the court to fight for his freedom, he would treat it like a circus for him to perform. It was shown and proven he had no genuine remorse or display any regret or emotion. It was reported he would blame pornography for his crimes. The court proceedings took place in Utah, Colorado, and mostly Florida. In other words, there were multiple trials and court proceedings. From the overall results, it was trialed and sentenced Ted would be electrocuted by the electric chair. Childhood. His childhood was constructed with a deeply dysfunctional family dynamic, along with highly disturbing warning signs of violence which would lead to his crimes. As one of the reasons, he was raised by his mother, Eleanor Louise Caldwell. However, it was noted Ted was told and thought he was raised by his sister, specifically an older sister, and he thought his grandparents were his biological parents. When being raised by his grandfather as well, Samuel Caldwell, it was reported Samuel was highly abusive, violent, racist, and an aggressive alcoholic, which Ted thought he was the biological father. Anyways, when Ted was 4 years old, his mother would escape with him, relocating themselves in Tacoma, Washington. There, his mother would meet his stepfather, Johnny Culpepper Bundy, which the name Bundy was given, leading to Ted inherit that name. However, Ted resented his stepfather not getting along, as he viewed his stepfather as an uneducated individual. It was reported one time when being with his maternal aunt, Ted placed knives from the kitchen all over her body, her sleeping body, and stood by her, smiling at her. He would engage in torture towards animals and creatures. In addition, he would break into homes and watch females shower or undress. School-wise, he had presented himself as an intelligent individual, carrying good grades. Childhood Part 2. However, it was reported he was teased, bullied, and socially isolated during his teenage years. He had a shy and awkward demeanor, which led to his classmates often labeling him as a stupid nerd or effeminate, and likely other names involving that, or related. He was, in addition, ashamed of his body, often being bullied from his physical features, leading to him not using the school shower or refusing to use it whenever he was required to. Ted had an older cousin who would bully and physically abuse Ted. In other words, a harsh rivalry. His childhood was overall deeply unstable and dysfunctional, which may have led to his crimes, as a combination of reasons. Personal life, potentially affecting their crimes and acts. During college life, in 1967, while attending the University of Washington, Ted fell deeply in love with a wealthy and seemingly beautiful student, Diane Edwards - Stephanie Brooks. When Ted asked to be his dating partner, she rejected him and even threw insults at him, which devastated Ted. However, that would lead to him creating a revenge scheme. Specifically, Ted would become a law student, creating a highly positive image, which led to her falling in love with Ted instead. However, once they dated, once again, and even mentioned about the potential marriage, Ted would abandon her, leave her as if nothing had happened between them. It was reported when they would meet after the abandonment, Ted would ignore her or sometimes mock her with his hands, making gestures on mocking her the way she speaks. Later on, he would meet a female named Elizabeth Cloper, a single mother in Seattle, Washington, who would later become a witness in his crimes. She had a daughter who goes by Molly, and Ted fitted in as a perfect father figure for Molly. Though during the night, he would slip out and progress through his killing sprees. Ted and Elizabeth would eventually break up due to the major red flags between them. Later on, though, Ted would find another female, this time Carol Ann Boone, who became his wife during the court proceedings for his murders. It was reported they would have sexual relationships in prison, leading to the pregnancy of Carol, giving birth to their biological daughter, Rosa Bundy. However, they would divorce eventually, then Carol and Rose changing their names to avoid Ted or his reputation in public. Pivotal events. Ted Theodore Robert Caldwell Bundy was born on the 24th of November, 1946 in Burlington, Vermont. He discovers his true parentage dynamics on 1969, which specifically means he would discover his supposedly older sister as his actual biological mother, and he would discover his so-called parents as his actual grandparents. On 1968, he got his revenge scheme towards Diane Edwards, also in other names Stephanie Brooks, while attending the University of Washington. Victim Carol DeRanche had escaped Ted on November 1974. On August 1975, Ted's first arrest had occurred. On June of 1977, he jumped and escaped from the courthouse. On December 1977, Ted had escaped and broke out of his jail cell. He was finally arrested on February 15, 1978. He married Carol Ann Boone on 1980 during his court proceedings. While not proven, it was reported he would contribute in school shootings in varieties of universities across the states during his murder spree. Quotes from Ted Theodore Robert Caldwell Bundy. I am in the enviable position of not having to feel any guilt, and that's it. Guilt is this mechanism we use to control people. It's an illusion. It's this kind of social control mechanism, and it's very unhealthy. I don't feel guilty for anything. I feel sorry for the people who feel guilt. I have no guilt, remorse, or regret over anything I have done. What's done is done. From a 1986 death row note to his cousin. Murder is not just a crime of lust or violence. It becomes a possession. Well, I guess some people are just compelled to kill. I'm the most cold-hearted son of a you'll ever meet. I'm not asking for clemency. I'm not asking for forgiveness or mercy. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm not going to say I'm sorry for something I didn't do. I don't feel any fear. I just feel an overwhelming sense of injustice. I don't want to die. My attorney John Connell, and so I have always amused over just how I behave and make sure people get the right impression. Quotes Part 2 from Ted Theodore Robert Caldwell Bundy. I just behaved the way I feel was right. Okay, let me just take the day of March 1st, 1976. The day that the judge rendered his verdict in my case first. I didn't show any emotion because what am I supposed to do? I'm gonna do my best to be in touch with my friends and family who were so kind and so good in writing and praying for me, and so many people contributed so much money in my bank account. Ultimately bailed out? Oh boy, you're asking a lot of questions there. Forensic inferences. Ted's life, from what I have read and was reported, It seemed like it was characterized by deeply unstable and unsuccessful actions aside from the murders and mask of sanity he tried to cover up his murders with. His home life and even school life was negative, likely characterizing him through the process until he became a murderer. His social isolation during his teenage years had contributed to the murders. However, one of the main reasons especially involves, the first rejection he received when he was in the university from Diane Edwards or Stephanie Brooks. It likely left some sort of trauma. While it isn't diagnosed or may not be PTSD, it's likely he had some sort of narcissistic trauma or hurt, potentially characterizing the victims he had picked. Due to the fact it was reported that the appearance of majority of the victims were eerie similar and strikingly identical to the female he was rejected from. It's likely girls had liked him from his attractive and cool persona, making a sense of narcissistic trait in him, causing to think and desire every female should like and simp for him. He likely had some sort of fantasy on controlling females, especially for those who had an eerie similar appearance to the female he was rejected from. Whenever he did the murders, it's likely in his mind he reflected back to the rejection he had received, then used it as fuel to brutally torture and engage in brutal activities with his victims. His childhood wasn't likely the main cause, but definitely had some sort of contribution. Overall, it was characterized from the relationship he had with females, along with being the ignored red flags he had during his childhood and teenage years. Legacy and impact. Ted Bundy's case remains one of the most notorious cases in America's history. The case of Ted Bundy, was the first ever serial killer court case that was publicly recorded on television. Ted Bundy became one of the most famous icons for serial killers, or its term. The case of Ted Bundy had spreaded fear towards colleges worldwide, reminding them on the potential danger that it could occur at any time. While in death row, it was reported Ted Bundy had helped with the case of catching serial killer Gary Ridgway, who was a serial killer in Green River, Seattle, Washington. Once, there was a time where Charles Manson, the devil cult leader in California, Ted Bundy, and Gary Ridgway, the Green River killer, breathed the same air and lived near each other. Ted Bundy was listed in the most top 10 wanted criminals in FBI manhunt list. On April of 2026, it was proven with forensic and DNA evidence Laura Ann Aim was one of the victims of Ted Bundy. Even till this day, detectives are looking for victims of Ted Bundy.